All right, y'all. It is time to focus. LBK. Welcome to the Focus LBK show. This is episode 30th for the week of March 31st, 2024. My name is Robert Jenkins, and today we're going to be talking about celebrating Easter, some upcoming events in the LBK, and also some kind of ominous developments in the news that kind of underscore and emphasize the need to embrace principles over politics. Before we get into anything, though, I want to tell y'all the thought for the week. And of course, today being Easter, it's only appropriate that we talk about Easter in our thought for the week. And our thought for the week comes from none other than the Holy Bible. This right here comes from the 24th chapter of Luke. And it says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices that they had prepared, and they went to the tomb where Jesus had been laid. And they found that the stone was rolled away from the tomb. And when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to him, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. He said, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners and be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." And then they remembered his words. That's one of the things I notice about when I read the Bible. A lot of times the things that Jesus says to his followers, they always, being human, I guess, they seem to always forget. There's a couple of times I remember in one of the Gospels, might have been a couple of them, where Jesus actually rebukes his followers. Like, man, I just told y'all that. Y'all don't remember? So yeah, that is very important for us to remember his words. He said he was going to be delivered over to the hands of sinners and be crucified. But on the third day, he was going to be raised again. And as believers in Christ and followers of Christ, that is what we believe also. All right, now let's get on into what's going on. Well, we talked about this a while ago on the show. And what it is the Stop the Violence Conflict Resolution Seminar, a youth violence conflict resolution seminar. That's going to be coming up on April 6th at May Simmons Community Center. It's going to start at 12 p.m. Says you are invited to join us. I really hope to get out there and attend this event. I would like to do some interviews out there and take some pictures. You know what our modus operandi is. You know how we do. We go take pictures and talk to people and come write articles about it. So we sure hope to be able to attend this Stop the Violence Youth Violence Conflict Resolution Seminar, April 6th at May Simmons Community Center. And I'm looking at this flyer here, and it doesn't say exactly who is putting it on. So y'all forgive me for not coming with more information on that. But it's the Stop the Violence Youth Violence Conflict Resolution Seminar, April 6th, May Simmons Community Center, and that's going to be 12 p.m. Now, another thing that's going on, it's going to be up there at the Buddy Holly Center for the Performing Arts, I think is the full name of that joint. It's going to be Star Wars, A New Hope in concert. So what they going to do, they going to play the film, and the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra is going to do the score live while they play the film. I'm sorry, if you like Star Wars at all, you got to be intrigued by that. I already got my tickets. Me and the Jenkins clan going to be there, or we ain't going to be square because we going to be there. We're going to check out this Star Wars, A New Hope. That's confusing to me. I think that means the original Star Wars. I'm from the era. I saw Star Wars at the theater. Matter of fact, it used to be a theater somewhere over there. I thought it was on 50th Street. I think that's where we saw it. No. We saw that mug over on 19th Street. It used to be a theater on the corner of 19th and Slide. Cinemark something. Y'all remember that? It used to be Paul's Parts over there. Now they got Marsha Sharp running through, and I think they didn't I think they done knocked all that stuff down. It definitely don't. The theater is not there anymore. But that's where I think we saw Star Wars. As back in '76, I remember seeing that. In fact, I had a huge replica of the Millennium Falcon that my pops bought me after we saw that. That movie was inspiring. It was awesome. That probably was the best movie I had seen up in my life up until that point. Keeping in mind I was only about 6 or 7 or something like that, I guess. Anyway, I have vivid, good memories of Star Wars. It tells that timeless story, the hero's journey, how you rise from humble beginnings and overcome your weaknesses and get stronger, and you fight against evil and you lose, and then you don't give up. You keep fighting against evil and you come back. That's a universal, man. That's what humans like to hear about. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's such a good movie. It's just a basic archetype, the hero's journey. Dude's name was George Lucas, I believe. Well, George Lucas knew what he was doing when he was writing that. That's the way we like to hear it. Nowadays, it's cool to, seems to be all the rage to tear movies down and tear your heroes down and tear your culture down and stuff and try to remake stuff. But you notice most of that stuff seems to be flopping. And it ain't flopping because fans are hateful and stuff like that. It's flopping because you're going against the universal formula for how to tell a good story, which is the hero's journey. So anyway, I got fond memories of Star Wars, A New Hope. That's confusing to me. I guess it's just the first Star Wars to me. I think that's the same one we're talking about. But it's going to be in concert, film, live with the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra playing the music of John Williams. And y'all remember how the music is a big part of that. Remember Darth Vader. Dun, 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 dun. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That music is inspirational and awe-inspiring. You know what I'm saying? So get out to check that out. That's going to be, of course, on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. May 4th at the Buddy Holly Center. You can get the tickets. You can click on this link down here that we got on the page down here in the show notes. Or you can just go on over to the Buddy Holly Center and directly click through and get your tickets. I got mine. Maestro David Cho told us we went to an event up there last week with Mr. Lemmy Pulliam, the African-American world-class tenor who blew our socks off along with everybody else up there at the Buddy Holly Center. And before the show, I think it was either Maestro Cho or Galen Wixon, two important figures with the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra. I think one of them two mentioned that you got to get your tickets, man. If you want the 4th to be with you, May 4th, 2024, you better grab them tickets, man. They going fast. We got ours and we couldn't hardly find 4 seats together. So if you want to go get them tickets now. Yeah. All right. LBK, we're going to switch right on over, shifting gears, and we're going to go right into words from the elders. Now, we're not going to put this out today, but we're going to put it out Wednesday. However, this past Saturday, March 30th, Mr. Nugent and I had the opportunity to go sit down with Mrs. Ann Crowder. And Miss Crowder, if you don't know, was recently honored during Patterson Library's Women's History Month celebration. Miss Patterson worked at the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and she also worked at HUD. She has a 40-year career in government, and she really helped this region in her work, helping farmers learn more about how to rotate crops and how to do what they do. Everybody here in Lubbock knows how important there's several crops here, but especially cotton is. Well, when she was with the USDA, she helped farmers, educate farmers on how to grow those crops, and she also helped secure loans and stuff like that when she worked with HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Another interesting part of our talk with her, with Mrs. Crowder, is that she was telling us how she grew up in Lubbock from an early age, and she touches on how East Lubbock used to be a haven for black businesses, and even her own family had a cafe. And she talks about how the students at Dunbar used to come out and go to their cafe and eat lunch. And I remember she touches on how cheap the prices were back in those days. And we got a whole little thing we're going to do on prices. And, we're historically minded people here. So we're going to do in the future, we're going to do a special on how prices used to be low, because we were looking at some of these prices at some of these East Lubbock newspapers, like the Southwest Digest, the Manhattan Heights Times, West Texas Times. They have ads in those for little mom and pop cafes and businesses like Mrs. Crowder's family's business, their little cafe they had, and it talks about how low those prices were. So anyway, she touches on that. She also talks about attending Texas Tech when it was still not so accepting of black students, not too long after it was integrated. Ms. Crowder attended Tech, and she talks about some of the discrimination she actually faced in those days. Now, like I say, we're not publishing that today. You know, we like to put stuff out on Monday and Wednesday. So stay tuned. This Wednesday, look to our Words from the Elders section, and we will be posting that oral history interview with Mrs. Ann Crowder. And now, let us turn our attention to this week's Down the Prairie Dog Hole, where we're going to talk about how important it is, in light of certain ominous developments that we have seen in the news. It is important to embrace principles over politics and also to be prepared. So, in our first segment, first topic, Down the Prairie Dog Hole, we asked the question, is free speech under attack? And the reason we say that is because we have seen, we're former military intelligence professionals. And one of the things that I learned as an intelligence professional, is you have to take in information from across the spectrum. I think it was George Washington or somebody once said that, to paraphrase, even trifles, even unimportant seeming things can be important. You have to notice everything. You have to cast your net widely, broadly, and survey a wide swath of information to understand what's going on around you. All that stuff, all of those details could be important. So we have always, for the last quarter century now, 25 years now, we have cast our net widely. When we survey the news and when we look at current events and what's going on in the world, we don't just look at one side of things. We look on all sides of the equation, all parts of the battlefield, the information battlefield. You know what I'm saying? And the reason we do that is because we know that there's important news going on that could be covered by one side and not the other, or covered by the other side and not your favorite one. We don't really have any favorites in this. Like I say, our guiding principle is principles over politics. It is policies over politics. And the reason we say that, when I was in college, I went to Wiley College, and I remember being in Dr. Thompson's Texas and Federal Constitution class. And one of the things that stands out to me, I can still see it clearly in my mind's eye. In our Texas and Federal Constitution book, it gave the definition of politics. And it was the first time that I ever actually saw the definition of politics. And according to that textbook, I think it was called, I can't remember what the textbook was called, but the class was Texas and Federal Constitution. The definition that they gave of politics was the art and science of gaining and maintaining power through elected office. The art and science of gaining and maintaining power through elected office. That is what the definition, according to that textbook, that's the definition of politics. Well, the reason we try to advocate principles over politics is because if you notice carefully in that definition, they're kind of telling you something without saying it. The art of gaining and maintaining power through elected office. How do you get elected? You strengthen your base. You use information and propaganda to strengthen your base while simultaneously weakening your opponent's base. You put out your side of the story and make yourself look as good as possible so you can get as many votes as possible while doing whatever you can to make your opponent look like he don't know what he's talking about, or he's evil, or he's bad, or she's evil. Another way of saying this is that politics is the art and science of gaining and maintaining power through elected office by sowing division. To me, it seems like division is an inherent part or integral part of politics. And that's why we try to stay away from politics. We try to look at principles. What are the principles in your life that you deem to be important? What are the principles that I deem to be important? Can we agree on any of these principles? Do we disagree on certain of these principles? I just don't have a lot of use for politics. Here's what's going on, or appears to be going on in America, where they're placing politics over principles. It looks like the FBI has been visiting Americans all across the country for exercising the freedom to speak their minds. And that's the principle. The principle is free speech. In fact, the very First Amendment talks about how, and I quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, we want to get and be careful about what we're talking about here, because in this case, Congress has not made a law restricting the freedom of speech, but what they have done apparently is sent out some of their enforcers, the FBI, to scare people away from exercising their freedom of speech. They've apparently done this all across the country. We got a link down here to 2 or 3 examples, but the big example that we want to talk about today is that there's a group, and they seem to be based in several different states, Missouri and Florida, but there is a group of what appears to be a group of black nationalist, socialist, left-leaning community activists. And they seem to be doing some really good work, this group does. They seem to really be out in the community getting good things done. However, this group was recently violently raided by dozens of FBI agents. It's caught on video. The group has video cameras at their offices, and they bust the door down. They throw in flashbang grenades. Dozens of FBI agents storm the place. The first thing they do is put up, duct tape over all the cameras so you can't see what they're doing. They take all of these people's documents and computers and electronics. You know how they do. They raid these people's offices and just destroy the place. That right there is a crippling attack, by the way. When they bust your door down and ransack your offices, it's going to take hundreds of dollars to fix that. This is a community organization helping black folks in, I believe he said, Missouri and Florida. And when the guy that's talking goes down the list of things that they're doing, it seems like they are doing some really good things. The group is called the African People's Socialist Party. And the elder, by the way, you're talking about words from the elders, the gentleman that apparently is running the group, or the spokesman for the group, his name is Omali Yeshitela. Omali Yeshitela. You got to say it with that accent. You know what I'm saying? He's a high up ranking individual in the African People's Socialist Party. And he talks about how they got raided. He gives matter of fact, I'll just let him tell it in his own words right here. Check it out.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out. Something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
Yeah, so when you listen to that little snippet, and by the way, if you click on this link, the article is linked down there. You can watch the whole video. And I will tell you straight up, this is a Tucker Carlson interview. And I purposefully didn't say that right off the bat because I wanted you to get a feel for what was actually going on. Some people out there will be angry or upset or immediately dismiss anything that's said if you say it was Tucker Carlson. Oh, it's Tucker Carlson, he this, that, and the other. Well, I don't know what Tucker Carlson is. I know, like anybody on TV, he plays a role. But I will say that, like I said before, I was trained to survey information from across the spectrum. And so that's why it's important that we not look at the source of the information necessarily. You need to look at the accuracy of the information. So this is the gentleman himself. His name is Omali Yeshitela, and he's telling Tucker Carlson, in this case, about how the FBI raided his business, raided his offices. They are community activists. It's a black leftist community activist group, got their offices raided. And why did they get their offices raided? Why did the FBI come in and destroy their offices and take, literally just steal all of their electronics and papers and stuff that I see in one? If you look at the article, if you look at the actual interview on this, you'll see them carrying out tables and stuff. What they taking tables for? What the FBI got a table for? What they taking that as evidence for? Anyway, why did they raid this African American community activist group? Well, apparently, Omali Yeshitela, the elder of the group, looks like the leader of the group, was criticizing the war in Ukraine, and he touched on what we understand to be the true origins of the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine didn't start in, what they say, 2020 or 2021 or whatever it was. This is basically a Cold War exercise that turned hot. It's been going on since at least 2014. In 2014, Victoria Nuland, who worked under President Obama, President Biden, she's worked under several presidents. She actually kind of is known for having led what they call a coup against Ukraine, where they took out the pro-Russian president of Ukraine and installed via coup. The CIA did, allegedly, installed a pro-U.S. dude, the current dude there right now, who, by the way, is a comedian. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, Zelensky. He's a comedian, former comedian. All of a sudden gets put in office after what many call a CIA coup. So this is what we understand to be the truth about the war in Ukraine. So this gentleman, Omali Yeshitela, from the African People's Socialist Party, was saying the same thing. And apparently this is what got him raided, got his facility raided. Let's listen in a little bit more on it and see what he's talking about.
Thank you very much for having me. This is an important interview for us. It helps us to break out of this encirclement, information encirclement that has been imposed on us by the U.S. government. And when we talk about the ignorance of the people being a factor here, part of the way to keep the people ignorant is to keep them from participating in discussion.
Yes.
Because the attack on my right to speak is also an attack on the right of the people to hear. So I have something to say. People may, as you said, agree or not agree with it, but at least they can have opinions that are informed opinions about agreeing or not agreeing with me. But when they use grenades and battering rams and armored vehicles and assault weapons and things like that to keep me from talking, and when they talk about putting me in prison for 15 years, which is the equivalent of a life sentence for me, this is designed to keep the people from hearing what I have to say. And it's a real testimony, in my opinion, of the fragility of a social system that cannot tolerate a discussion coming from somebody from one of the most economically depressed sector of the city of St. Louis. So it's all a falsification. I wanted to say, first of all, that our lawyers, for the purpose of making this defense, had to move forward and say that even if we did what they said we did, that the First Amendment protects us. But I want to say beyond that, that they fabricated most of what they say, that they're lying. It's mostly a fabrication, and that they're politically motivated in doing what they have done because of internal crisis and crisis in the existing global system that sees forces like China and Russia, and increasingly even countries like Iran, countries like Venezuela are challenging the hegemony of a country that has held that for the longest period of time, has been the big hegemon.
Yeah. So right there, he touches on the point that I'm making. It's politics. They have the right to put out their opinion. He gets up on, as most of these little organizations do. I say these little organizations, you mean like this organization? Focus LBK. We get up there as citizens and journalists and thinkers and writers and poets and whatever we do, pundits, and we put out our opinion on things. And for doing that, this gentleman gets raided because the government says that his opinion on Ukraine is wrong. And he puts out the whole thing about how, like I said, his opinion on it seems to be accurate as far as we understand. It's basically a power play on the global stage by the Biden administration and started under the Obama administration. So if you think about it, Russia is only doing what anybody else would do, for as far as I understand. So if we're over there meddling in countries right next to Russia that have always kind of belonged to Russia and been under Russia's sway, I'm talking about Ukraine, and then we go over there and expand NATO. NATO was created to destroy Russia, to keep Russia contained with nuclear weapons, menacing Russia with nuclear weapons. That's what NATO is about. So we're putting NATO closer and closer to Russia, and Russia's like, we're breaking agreements, by the way. There was treaties that were signed after the Cold War ended. I think Reagan signed it, said we would not put NATO close to Russia like that. Now, we broke those treaties and we're pushing NATO closer and closer to Russia, trying to get Ukraine into NATO so we can do what? Put missiles and biological weapons facilities and stuff like that, all kind of dangerous facilities and weapons right up on Russia's border. Russia can't go for that. It's not surprising that they would be against that. They can't help it. Anybody would be. We did the same thing as the United States when it came down to the Bay of Pigs invasion. Remember that? The Cuban Missile Crisis? Where Russia at that time back in the 60s said they were since Russia and Cuba were communists, they were homeboys, Cuba was going to let Russia put missiles right in Cuba, which is like 90 miles from the United States. Those missiles are too close for us to defend against. We couldn't even defend ourselves with missiles there. Well, that's the same thing that's going on right now with Russia, with us putting missiles and biological weapons in Ukraine, right in Russia's backyard. It was so close that Russia can't defend itself against it. So it's a common sense thing that Russia would be opposed to our actions in Ukraine, especially when it comes to the point that we overthrew the government that used to be there and put in a government that was friendly to the United States. So just for saying that, this gentleman and his group gets raided by the FBI. Let's see what else he got to say.
I just want to get to the facts of it quickly. So am I misreading this? I think your lawyer is right. Even if you are guilty of what they accuse you of doing, you're not guilty of any crime because you're not accused of violence, theft, no conventional crime. You're accused of having the wrong opinions. Am I missing something?
Well, yeah, because what they've said is that even if what we said was true, even if it's disinformation, we're accused of spewing Russian disinformation. And they have said that even if we said what we said is true, it still amounts to disinformation. So they're not necessarily accusing us of lying. They're accusing us of talking. Right. So, I mean, that's it's an illegal document. When we've appealed this thing, and we immediately went to court on this thing after 9 months of being held in a kind of legal purgatory, where we were just unindicted co-conspirators, which meant that we didn't have legal standing and we couldn't go to court and say, hey, these people have just looted us and they have handcuffed us and they've shut down entire neighborhoods, refused to allow people to enter their homes. This is pre-dawn. Or leave without showing identification. They've done all of these things, and we can't go to court and complain about it because we have no legal standing, because for 9 months we weren't charged with anything. They've just stolen all of these materials. They've looted our files. They've taken laptops and iPads and iPhones and things like that. So it's 9 months before they even indict us. And before that, they offered a $10 million bounty for any information that on the man Alexander Ionov, who they said was the Russian for whom we were working, and on anybody who could provide information on us. They offered a $10 million bounty. And this is even after they've stolen, looted everything they've got. They have no case because there is nothing there. It's a totally fabricated case that they've made against us, and it's extraordinarily dangerous.
Well, so right there, the government is apparently talking about Russian disinformation. This black socialist group is being accused of working for Vladimir Putin, working in conjunction with some kind of Russian agent. Now, to be fair, we don't know who these people are working with. This is my first time ever hearing about this group. I do know it is true that throughout history, Russia has reached out to members of the black community. I remember reading Langston Hughes's book, was it the I Wonder as I Wander or the Big C? I can't remember which one it was, but he talks about how he went to Cuba and to Russia. The Russians were actively recruiting black people because they were trying to use us as pawns to make the United States look bad and say, hey, the United States talks about freedom and equality, but look how they treat their black people. So Russia was seizing on that fact to make the United States look bad through propaganda, counter U.S. propaganda. So the Russians have always reached out to black folks, and they could be reaching out to this group. But as this gentleman is saying, he's saying they're not doing it, and there's no evidence that they're doing it. They took all their materials and still don't even have a case against them because all they were doing is speaking in a way about a government policy that the government does not like. So apparently they were targeted. Now that to me is chilling. In fact, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to chill. It's supposed to make you not speak your mind. But the problem with that, as I say, that's politics over principles, and we're for principles over politics. The principle in this country is all citizens of the United States have free speech. When that gentleman said, Omali Yeshua from the African People's Socialist Party, when he said, when you deprive people of free speech, it not only takes your right to speak away, it takes the right that listeners have away. Well, guess what? That is 100% true. That is, in fact, a Frederick Douglass quote. So my man here is quoting Frederick Douglass. You remember Frederick Douglass? He said, what to the slave is the 4th of July? Frederick Douglass couldn't stand up and give a speech like that. He himself having once been a slave at a time when slavery was still going on in this country. He stands up and gives a speech talking about what to the slave is the 4th of July. That was very embarrassing to the United States. If we did not have the freedom of speech, he would not have been able to say that. If Malcolm X didn't have freedom of speech, he wouldn't have been able to stand up and say the militant, angry things that he said about the United States government. The so-called church militant Martin Luther King, he would not have been able to stand up and say that the United States government is the biggest purveyor of violence on the planet. And look at what we're doing right now. Where are we at right now? In Ukraine. He was not Martin Luther King accurate on that? But you see what I'm saying? This is why it's important for us, especially as minority citizens in this country, to vehemently stand up for and support all of the rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, because the Constitution doesn't give us rights. It enumerates the rights that God gave us. And it doesn't enumerate all the rights that God gave us. The founder said that the Constitution merely enumerates some of the rights that we have, that the government may not infringe on. It is supremely important to me, I believe, that as I say, we're minority citizens of the United States. Numerically in the minority, it's indisputable. Something like 30 million of us, to 13% of the population. When you are in that position, it is supremely important that you be able to speak on behalf of your cause and speak freely your conscience, and to do those things and celebrate religious, talking about Easter holiday here. You have to have that freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is freedom of conscience. Freedom of conscience just means you can feel the way you feel deep in your heart, and nobody can get you in trouble for it. They can't imprison you for feeling the way you feel. They can't imprison you for speaking your mind and your heart and your soul on certain issues. As numerical minorities in this country, that is of supreme importance to us. You know what I'm saying? Because at any point in time, like most other countries on the planet, if you were a minority, there's countries right now. If you the minority, you better shut up. You better not say what you thinking about. You better not say something that the government is opposed to. Y'all know I'm talking about Middle Eastern countries, African countries. There's countries all over the planet. Even some Western countries do not embrace the freedom of speech the way we do. The Constitution is man, I'm not trying to give a sermon here, but come on. If you got the right to do something and it says it in the founding document, the law of the land of the country, that you got the right to do something, then it is incumbent on you, I think, on us, on all of us to embrace that document and ensure that we have those rights. Because if not, we see what happens. You get raided by the government tools of fear and oppression, law enforcement, people with guns and battering rams, armored personnel carriers showing up at your house because you saying something they don't like. And it's the truth. As the gentleman pointed out, the government is not even saying they're lying. They're just saying we don't like it. Anyway, peep out that whole interview. Yes, it's Tucker Carlson. Hold your nose if you must. Some people don't like him. Some people do. But evaluate the information for what it's worth. Hold your nose if you need to. Peep out the interview. This brother, Omali Yesha Taylor from the African People's Socialist Party, man, he be talking that talk. Make me feel like I'm young and in college again. Back when I used to want to be Malcolm X, want to join the Nation of Islam back in the day. He kindling that fire back in the belly. You know what I'm saying? But peep that interview out, man, because some of the stuff he says in there is just mind-blowing and eye-opening. So anyway, we're going to move on to our next topic. And our next topic is the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, when I first heard about this several days ago, I was really shook. I was sitting at work just speechless for a moment. And the reason why is because some of y'all may know my family and I, although I'm from Lubbock, we've been gone for 25 years. And for about 12 or 15 of those years, we were in Baltimore, right outside Baltimore. I was stationed at Fort George G. Meade. And we traveled on the Francis Scott Key Bridge often, many, many times. I used to come, if I'm remembering correctly, I used to come on the Francis Scott Key Bridge when I was in school to learn how to be a videographer up there. I used to go to school at night. It was really hard going. Y'all know how it is when you're working all day, being a daddy, a family man, a husband, and working all day, and then going to school from like 6 to 12 or something like that, with traffic and all that stuff factored in. And one of the ways I used to try to get around that traffic was to travel on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We used to go in downtown Baltimore. There is Fort McHenry, which is just an amazing attraction up there. That's one of the things I didn't like Baltimore. I liked Maryland. I didn't like Virginia. One of the things I did like about Maryland, yes, it was trafficy. Yes, it was super expensive. Yes, the politics were not my cup of tea. But they did have a lot of historical, cool family things to go do. And me and the Jenkins clan, the Water Panther clan, as I call us, we used to spend a lot of time up there at Fort McHenry. I used to ride my bike up there. I would take the family up there and we would picnic and chill and sit on the bay. And man, it was such an awesome time. So that's why I was shook when I heard about this collapse of this Francis Scott Key Bridge. Now, when I first looked at this footage, many things ran through my mind. And if you haven't seen the footage, it's linked down below. You can check it out. But one of the things that I noticed is that when the power goes off, it seemed to me like the lights in the ship went off, meaning the power went out. But right when the power went out and the lights went off, that's when somebody looked like they gunned the engine, meaning they stepped on it. Ooh, they floored the engine because a big old plume of smoke comes out of the smokestack. So that to me, I interpret that as somebody jamming on the gas pedal, so to speak, pushing it down. So how is it that when the power goes off, the gas pedal seems to get jammed down and the ship seems to accelerate into the support structure that was holding up, one of the support structures that was holding up the bridge? That was already suspicious to me. Now, a lot of people don't know or may not know that just before this happened, there was a huge attack in Russia where I think it was 4 so-called Islamic militant type cats from Tajikistan attacked Russia and shot up a mall and all that kind of stuff. Well, they got captured, and they said that they were hired off of it wasn't TikTok. It was one of these apps. They got hired off an app to shoot up the mall. The United States, immediately came out and said it was ISIS. Well, when I heard that these cats was from Tajikistan, the first thing I thought of was the Boston bombing, where the Tsarnaev brothers was also from one of them stands. I don't know if it was Tajikistan. I can't even remember off the top of my head, but they were from one of those stands, Uzbekistan or something. And Russia warned us about them and said, hey, yo, these cats, we just noticed them going in y'all's country, man. They visas and stuff and passports pinging and whatever. And we just wanted to let you know these cats are terrorists. So countries routinely let each other know, like, hey, man, these cats over here, they bad news. Watch out for them. Russia let us know about the Tsarnaev brothers from one of them stands, the Uzbekistan, I think, whatever it was. Well, we say we didn't let Russia know about these cats, even though we apparently knew about it. We didn't alert Russia because we said, oh, well, we having problems with Russia. So, Well, here's another angle on that story. There's a lady named Victoria Nuland who... in the Secretary of State, the State Department, rather, under President Obama, all the way through up until recently under Biden. And she is a neocon. She is a big war hawk. She is the one who is accused of having run the coup in, guess where? Ukraine. That took away the pro-Russian, or took out the pro-Russian president and installed what? A pro-U.S. president in Ukraine. This is what she is alleged to have done. Of course, all this stuff would be top secret, but people that are in positions to know have written about it for years now. This occurred in 2014. So apparently, this Victoria Nuland character was recently, she recently quit. She was recently fired, which is odd, but she was bragging to Putin, saying Putin better watch out. We got a big surprise coming for him. So some people are saying that attack on Russia was the big surprise that Victoria Nuland was talking about. And not only that, they're saying that this Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, the way this ship ran into it looks really suspicious. And they were speculating that this may have been retaliation. Because that's what happens when they do have if you don't know, folks, they do have the ability to hijack things and use remote controls and take over systems. Teslas can be easily hacked. Most cars nowadays are basically computers, not even just Teslas. Most conveyances, most vehicles, ships, airplanes, whatever, are largely just computers. You don't even need to actually be in them to fly them or to drive them or to steer them. So Russia does have the capability to hack and do the type of things that they are alleged to have done in this situation. We do too, by the way. It's not just Russia. Every major country can do it. Matter of fact, you probably don't even have to be a country. You just have to know the right hackers to be able to do this kind of stuff. And some people are saying this has weird anomalous features. This Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse has these weird anomalous features that just look like this could be a terrorist attack. And it's funny to me that they're saying, no, it's not a terrorist attack. This is just an accident. Oh my God, it's not. That's the way you do when it really is a terrorist attack. When something really is a terrorist attack, you downplay it and say, no, it was just an accident. When the government wants to create fear, they hype stuff up. Oh my God, they attacked us. They hate us because we free. They did this, they did that. But if it really is an attack, you don't want to create fear because that makes you look incompetent. You couldn't stop this from happening. So the government tends to downplay stuff like that, from what I understand. So the fact that they're saying, no, this was an accident and we're going to pay for everything. Biden administration just said they're going to pay for all the rebuilding of the bridge. Well, that is, some people are saying that in and of itself points out that this could have been retaliation, a real terrorist attack. Well, listen, all of that stuff is kind of speculation. Like I said, it's going to be top secret stuff that we don't have access to. We can look at both sides of it and wonder, go back and forth. One thing that we don't have to wonder about, though, is that this was a tragedy. There was a loss of life, not huge loss of life, but any loss of life is bad, especially working class folks on this bridge. The other thing that this points out is that, remember how we had them fires up there up north? Up near Amarillo, them fires killed 7,000 head of cattle or something like that, and numerous people, and just the biggest wildfires in Texas history, I think they were saying. Well, when that happened, we wrote that article about being prepared, and then lo and behold, this Francis Scott Key Bridge collapses. Now, there's some things about this, not only that make it look plausible that could have been a terrorist attack, but it's just some deeper things about it that you have to search a little bit to find. I don't think they're just really saying this on the news everywhere. The first thing is that bridge, this Francis Scott Key Bridge, was used to get around Baltimore. Baltimore, if you ever been, it has tunnels that run through the middle of the city. You can go through some tunnels on the toll road to get under the bay. Instead of going over the Chesapeake Bay on a bridge, you can go under the bay through some tunnels. We used to do that all the time. Well, the Francis Scott Key Bridge is there in part because they will not allow certain materials, hazardous materials, to go through those tunnels. So a truck and you carrying some kind of nuclear stuff or some kind of chemical stuff or whatever, some kind of hazardous material, you can't go through the tunnels. You can't go directly through Baltimore. You got to go around it a mile or two out over the Chesapeake Bay on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Now, they can't transport hazardous materials from one side of Baltimore to the other, up the I-95 corridor, I think it is. So that's going to throw that off. That's going to throw all truck-bound shipping off, which means supply lines are damaged in that area, which means the economy is damaged in that area, which means you may or may not be able to get vital things in that area. You see why I'm saying it ties into being prepared? It's going to make life harder in that area, and it's going to make things harder to obtain and acquire in that area, and possibly throughout the nation. There might be shortages in cars and car parts, and who knows how this is going to reverberate through the economy and through the supply chain. Again, that underscores the point that maybe we need to have our own stuff, have extras of things just in case. Another thing that they don't report too much in the news, I've seen, I did see it in one place, obviously I'm talking about it, is that there were military supply ships stationed in Baltimore Harbor that in the event of war, these fast moving ships used to transport material to our fighting forces. Now, several of those ships are trapped in Baltimore because that bridge blocks off Baltimore, the port of Baltimore, from getting out into the harbor, into the ocean, to the Atlantic. You see what I'm saying? So now we got military assets trapped there. I don't know how important they'll be in the overall situation, but I know if something go down, you don't want fast military transports trapped in a place where they shouldn't be, unable to help your war effort. So anyway, yet another thing that points to, hey man, things is weird, things are ominous, things is shaky. Obviously, they real shaky. A bridge then came down. When things is ominous and weird and shaky like that, it again underscores the point of, hey, man, do what you can to be prepared. Get you some extra food on hand. Get you some extra whatever you need on hand. Extra medication, extra fuel. Just anything you can afford. Take common sense steps to have it on hand. To be what? Able to be, to have self-determination. To support yourself. Anyway, LBK, these are just some things for y'all to consider. We down the prairie dog hole a little bit, but we like to be in the prairie dog hole. So anyway, hope y'all enjoyed this show. Hope y'all have a good week. Hope y'all keep the message of Easter, the true message of Easter, which is the overcoming of death by belief in Jesus Christ. What does it say? He who believes in me shall not die, shall live, shall have life and not die. I'm not no preacher. I can't quote it directly, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So I hope that stays on your mind and heart this week. I hope y'all get out and peep out that 4th. May the 4th be with you. Peep out that Star Wars. Hope y'all get out to that Stop the Violence Youth Summit over at May Simmons. And man, whatever you do, have a good week. And relax and enjoy yourself. You know why? Because we live in the glorious Lubbock, Texas, USA, our fair, flat city. And with that, we're going to say peace. And we'll catch y'all next week.